I'm Drew Curtis and I run the website fark.com, and it's been around for, as of February, 16 years, which is funny to think about because not only is that an incredible amount of time, but the entire World Wide Web has only really been around for, I think 30, and I didn't find it until 1993, so what's ending up happening is that we're almost as old as the freaking internet. So Fark has been many things over the years. It's technically a news aggregator. I've been calling it lately a discovery engine because we don't use an algorithm to select things that we post on the news cycle. I do, however, select trying to find stuff that's funny, and it's mistakenly categorized as a weird news site. And yeah, we have a lot of weird news, but it's actually, but we have real news too, which is rare. Not rare that we have it, it's just really rare that real news exists. And when we do, we re-headline it so that it's funny, but then we link out to the other sites. So I'm here this week for a reunion of a group that Poynter put together in 2009 and 2010, which they called Sense Makers. And by the way, this is my interpretation of what the thing is supposed to be. I don't actually know, but I came here because they gave me a free plane ticket back in 2009, and the Poynter Institute was kind of awesome, so I thought, oh, I should go if they're inviting me and see what this is about. I was actually confused as to why they invited me, because as far as like where Fark exists in the journalism sort of ecosphere, it's like, you know, it's like we're on the moon basically, you know, it's like we're kind of related, orbiting around it, but I mean, I'm not doing journalism, but I'm involved, you know, at some level with all the traffic we drive. And so, and what I found out when I got here is that was actually the point. Because the group is so diverse, the problems that we talk about with each other, somebody is almost always able to solve it, which is fascinating because I'm not just talking journalism stuff, I'm talking like the whole 9 yards, like what new tools are out there for video editing, how do you effectively run a Kickstarter, what's going on in the world of opera that's relevant to journalism, and if you think about it, there's a little bit of overlap, you know? Yeah, a lot of that cycle that you see where like people will like, you know, have sites will be around for a few years and then sort of disappear, has a lot of the blame lies with venture capitalists, believe it or not. And they're not going to get mad at me for saying this because they know they do this, but the idea is basically, you know, they're looking for huge hits. And if you don't hit it out of the baseball analogy is they're always swinging for home runs. And even if you are doing pretty well, if, for example, like, and I'm thinking in particular about what happened with Dig, where basically that's what happened. They were starting to get their asses handed to them by Twitter. And they realized that what Twitter was offering at the time was going to replace more or less what Dig was doing. Maybe, this is what they thought. And I do not know this firsthand, this part. But they had to swing for the fences, and so they did a major redesign that made it look a hell of a lot more like Twitter and work a lot like Twitter, but that wasn't the website that people were wanting to go to. The difference with Fark is that we are a completely different animal from even most other companies, and I have this conversation all the time. It's since I own 100% of it, I am the guy who makes all the decisions. Now, it's not in a vacuum, obviously, but the idea is basically I don't have anybody else telling me, you know, hey, you got these metrics you got to hit. You have to do this, you have to do that. And so I move very slowly, actually, and deliberately. In fact, I make sure that if I'm ever going to make a substantial change to the website, and this came up a few years ago when sites started using Facebook for their commenting platform. You know, that's not necessarily a bad idea, but I decided to wait it out and see how that went. And then a few years later, you see websites starting to move those comments back to a different platform or get rid of them altogether. So in the meantime, because I did nothing, I haven't wasted any resources, and I know more or less what to do now. So I'm constantly 2 years behind the curve, but it turns out that's a great longevity strategy. We walked out after the first break, and I was standing there with Doug, and you know, of course, we're in this big, extremely empty room. And it was not an extremely empty room back in 2009, and Doug says, man, you know, this really seems empty. And I said, you know, I see opportunity. I mean, this is essentially, that's the beginning, that's the point where finally the people that were stopping people from making the decisions that needed to be made, they're not here anymore. And I see that in a lot of mainstream media offices. You know, I go over to, you know, Gannett USA Today in, you know, DC, and there's just, you know, floors are empty, and, you know, you go into other places and see the same thing. But I would say to journalists out there that this is probably the time when things actually change. There is opportunity in empty spaces.